Hey guys, I'm going to do a little bit of a overview of Matthew 24. I'm going to let this listener's Bible do the reading, and I'll pause periodically to give commentary. But this is sort of just an end times message, and it's important because there's a lot of detail in Matthew 24 about the end times and signs about how we are living in the end times. So I'm just going to let the reading go on, and I'm going to pause and comment as we go along. Here we go.
Matthew 24. And Jesus went out, and departed from the temple. And his disciples came to him, for to show him the buildings of the temple. And Jesus said unto them, See ye not all these things? Verily I say unto you, there shall not be left here one stone upon another, that shall not be thrown down. And as he sat upon the Mount of Olives, the disciples came unto him privately, saying, Tell us, when shall these things be? And what shall be the sign of thy coming, and of the end of the world? And Jesus answered and said unto them, Take heed that no man deceive you. For many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ, and shall deceive many.
So just to kind of comment on that part, first thing he says is that many are going to come in his name, claiming to be Christ, and they will deceive many. And if you notice, there's a lot of, I'm not going to name any names, but there's a lot of people out there who have kind of talked about how they are Christ, or like they're literally the next coming of Jesus. And I wouldn't say that they deceive very many people. It would take a really, really convincing person to convince people that you're actually the second coming of Christ, you know. But there are people out there who do it, and I wouldn't say they have that much of a draw. But this is a sign of the end times, and you can see that we've already got that happening. It's something that you could easily Google and find. There's several people who have claimed this. So yeah, this is one sign being fulfilled here, and this is from Jesus saying it himself. So let's move on to the next one.
And ye shall hear of wars, and rumours of wars. See that ye be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines, and pestilences, and earthquakes in divers places. All these are the beginning of sorrows.
So here we have the beginning of sorrows. I guess you could call it the beginning of the end. You've got rumors of wars and wars. But those are the types of things you're going to have to hear about to indicate the end times, essentially. So, and that's not something that you have to look far to find, because there are people talking about wars. You know, you've heard people talk about World War III and things like that. And then you have in verse 7 talking about nation rising against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and the famines and the pestilences and the earthquakes. Those are all things that are also happening, which are signs of the end times. And I have heard the argument that nation shall rise against nation could be something like nationalities or race. You know, you have race wars and things like that, or at least people talking about them. So that's another possibility of the meaning there. I'm going to pick up where we left off there.
Then shall they deliver you up to be afflicted, and shall kill you. And ye shall be hated of all nations for my name's sake. And then shall many be offended, and shall betray one another, and shall hate one another. And many false prophets shall rise, and shall deceive many. And because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold.
So if you look at the verse 9, that you'll be delivered up to be afflicted and shall kill you and shall be hated of all nations. You got to remember he is addressing the disciples at this time who are followers of Christ. So when he's saying that ye shall be hated of all nations for my name's sake, you got to think about how that means that Christians are going to be persecuted and hated. And you can see that Christianity is sort of becoming this thing that gets really demonized by people, especially in America. I've noticed it a lot lately. And if you look at verse 10, then shall many be offended, and shall betray one another, and shall hate one another. And you can see that easily in a lot of these groups that are, I'm not going to name any groups again, I don't want to name anybody, but you've got groups of people that are really offended about different things. And even within their own groups, they become offended about things that each other are doing. Um, Again, it's one of those signs of the end times that you can kind of keep track of. And then, of course, in verse 11, you have false prophets rising up, deceiving people. And I'm going to continue the trend, not naming any names, but that's obvious. You can see that happening in the world too. And I think verse 12 is really interesting because it says that because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold. And if you think about that, there's so much evil in the world, so much deception, that love doesn't really have the ability to blossom or be as real as it can be. And so people just are losing their faith sort of in love. And when I say love, I don't mean the type of love that is promoted a lot of times by the media and, love and tolerance about everything. But what I mean is Christ's definition of love, which is the love of Christ. And in verse 13, I don't think we've read it yet, but he that shall endure to the end, the same shall be saved. So throughout all these things, he's addressing the disciples once again. And whoever endures through all of this shall be saved. So I'm going to pick up right there.
But he that shall endure unto the end, the same shall be saved. And this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations. And then shall the end come. When ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation, spoken of by Daniel the prophet, stand in the holy place, whoso readeth, let him understand. Then let them which be in Judea flee into the mountains. Let him which is on the housetop not come down to take anything out of his house, neither let him which is in the field return back to take his clothes.
So starting with verse 14, the gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all the nations, and then shall the end come. So obviously this is an important part of the message of the end times. The gospel will be preached in all the world for a witness to all the nations, and so that's something that has to happen. And when ye therefore shall see the abomination, verse 15, I believe this is talking about the Antichrist standing in the holy place, kind of, I should say, solidifying the prophecy, I guess you could say. And when that happens, then let them which be in Judea flee into the mountains, and let him which is on the housetop not come down to take anything out of the house. I think that's saying that people are going to realize it's really the end and that nothing else really matters. There's no reason to even go take a second look at any of your belongings or anything like that. Again, verse 18, same concept. Let's start off at verse 19.
And woe unto them that are with child, and to them that give suck in those days. But pray ye, that your flight be not in the winter, neither on the Sabbath day. For then shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, no, nor ever shall be. And except those days should be shortened, there should no flesh be saved. But for the elect's sake, those days shall be shortened.
So saying, verse 19, woe to them that are with child and to them that give suck in those days. I'm not sure exactly what that means, but it appears to be, if you're pregnant, if you're nursing, raising children, that it's just not going to be good for them for whatever reason. It's the reason is not given. But pray ye that your flight be not in the winter, neither on the Sabbath day. I think this just means that when it's least expected, almost. Because a lot of people are going to think, oh, the end time is going to be on this day or that day, and it's probably going to be when you least expect it, as you will find out. And it's saying that the tribulation is going to be great, than it's ever greater than it's ever been, or that it ever will be. And unless the days of that tribulation are shortened, then nobody would be saved. But for the elect's sake, those days shall be shortened. And I think the elect is just a reference to those that will actually endure through to the end.
Then if any man shall say unto you, Lo, here is Christ, or there, believe it not. For there shall arise false Christs and false prophets, and shall show great signs and wonders, insomuch that, if it were possible, they shall deceive the very elect.
This is interesting because it makes me wonder, is it going to get so bad that it's going to be really that difficult to tell that it's not Christ himself, It's saying here that they're going to be able to, these false prophets are going to be able to show great signs and wonders. And they're going to be so good at it that if it were possible, that they would be able to deceive the elect. Now, it sounds like it's not possible to deceive the elect, but if it were, then they would be deceived. So that's interesting. I'm going to pick it up on 25.
Behold, I have told you before. Wherefore, if they shall say unto you, Behold, he is in the desert, go not forth. Behold, he is in the secret chambers, believe it not. For as the lightning cometh out of the east, and shineth even unto the west, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. For wheresoever the carcass is, there will the eagles be gathered together.
So again here, another reference to when you hear it from other people saying, here he is, there he is, just to not believe it. When you start hearing people saying, oh, that's Christ, that's Christ, that's Christ, it's basically saying don't believe it. For as verse 27, as the lightning cometh out of the east and shineth unto the west, so I think verse 27 is just saying that it happens that fast, and that's how the coming of man will be, like lightning. Verse 28 is a little bit confusing. I'm not sure exactly what it means, but for wheresoever the carcass is, there will the eagles be gathered together. I think that's just saying it will be obvious, and it won't be coming from people telling you there he is, there he is. It'll just be obvious, just like lightning, just like the telltale signs of where the carcass is and the eagles gather together. I think that's what it's saying. So I'm going to pick it up on 29.
Immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light, and the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens shall be shaken. And then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven. And then shall all the tribes of the earth mourn, and they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. And he shall send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other.
So picking it up on 29 through 31, talking about how the sun will be darkened, the moon won't give light, the stars will fall, and the powers of heaven will be shaken. It sounds like a lot of things are going to happen, a lot of signs are going to happen, and it's going to scare people. And it says, then the sign of the Son of Man will appear in heaven. I'm guessing that that's what the sign is all of these crazy things happening in the sky, all these signs. And then shall all the tribes of the earth mourn, and they'll see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. So I don't know. Obviously, if you're a follower of Christ, you probably won't be one of the ones mourning. I think this is referring to the people who know they messed up, who know that they weren't, who knew that they were wrong. And on 31, he shall send his angels with the sound of a great trumpet, and they shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other. So all around the world, going to gather them all up together. We're going to pick it up on 32.
Now learn a parable of the fig tree. When his branch is yet tender, and putteth forth leaves, ye know that summer is nigh. So likewise ye, when ye shall see all these things, know that it is near, even at the doors. Verily I say unto you, this generation shall not pass, till all these things be fulfilled. Heaven and earth shall pass away, but my word shall not pass away. But of that day and hour knoweth no man, no, not the angels of heaven, but my Father only. But as the days of Noah were, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be.
So on 32, it's interesting. Jesus says, learn a parable of the fig tree. So it's almost like he's demanding it, like he's saying, this is not an option, that you need to learn this. When the branch is yet tender and putteth forth the leaves. So when this parable is, when this fig tree starts to begin to show its signs of growing and putting its leaves out, you know that summer is nigh. So you know that the season is near. And I'm guessing this is talking about, that the end is near, the season of the end. And so 33, likewise, when you see all these things, you know that it is near. Just again, reiterating that when you start seeing all these things, it's that close, even at the door. And 34 is saying that this generation won't pass till all of these things be fulfilled. Heaven and earth shall pass away, but my word shall not pass away. I think that's just saying that the words of Christ, they're everlasting. But of that day and hour knoweth no man, no, not the angels of heaven, but my Father only. So even the angels don't even know when exactly the moment is of the end. Only the Father knows. And it will be just like the days of Noah. So shall the coming of man be. So we'll pick it up on 38.
For as in the days that were before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying, and giving in marriage, until the day that Noah entered into the ark, and knew not until the flood came, and took them all away. So shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. Then shall two be in the field, the one shall be taken, the other left. Two women shall be grinding at the mill, the one shall be taken, and the other left.
So it's saying that just like in the days of Noah, that's what the return of Christ is going to be like. People are going to be going about their business, eating, drinking, marrying, all up until the day that it happens. And they're not going to know because it's just going to come, and then it's just going to affect everybody. And it's saying two will be in the field, one taken away, two grinding at the mill, one taken away. Um, I think this leaves a picture for a lot of people that um, suddenly maybe they just disappear or something like that. And I think that it's just emphasizing that it's that effective. You know, you don't know that it's going to happen. It's just going to happen suddenly, and you're not going to be ready for it. So here's a really important part here, starting on 42.
Watch therefore, for ye know not what hour your Lord doth come. But know this, that if the good man of the house had known in what watch the thief would come, he would have watched, and would not have suffered his house to be broken up. Therefore be ye also ready, for in such an hour as ye think not, the Son of Man cometh.
So another command here by Jesus. If you back it up just for a second, he says, learn the parable of the fig tree. And then if you come down here, he says, watch, therefore, for you know not what hour your Lord doth come. So there's another command here. He said, you have to be watching. So this is the important part here. You have to be watching for the signs for the end times. And you know we're here, but we still have to keep our eyes out, and we still have to do our best to follow Christ. And he's emphasizing here, if the good men of the house had known when a thief would come, remember this is sort of a parable here, he would have watched and would not have suffered his house to be broken up. Therefore be ye also ready. So it's just saying that, you know, if you knew, then you would be able to, you know, just wait until the last minute and be there on time. But that's not the key. You know, the key is always being watchful, always being ready. So we're picking up on 45, and you'll see that indicates your faithfulness here.
Who then is a faithful and wise servant, whom his Lord hath made ruler over his household to give them meat in due season? Blessed is that servant, whom his Lord, when he cometh, shall find so doing. Verily I say unto you, that he shall make him ruler over all his goods.
So like I said here, indication of a faithful servant is when the Lord makes him the ruler over the household, that he is always doing the right thing, always able to provide, and always faithful. And that's why he chose him to be the ruler of the household. And so we'll pick it up on the last few verses here to finish off the chapter.
And if that evil servant shall say in his heart, My Lord delayeth his coming, and shall begin to smite his fellow servants, and to eat and drink with the drunken, the Lord of that servant shall come in a day when he looketh not for him, and in an hour that he is not aware of, and shall cut him asunder, and appoint him his portion with the hypocrites. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth.
So that finishes off Matthew 24, basically saying that if the servant is evil, he'll, you know, indication of that person being evil is the slothfulness, sort of saying, oh, the Lord, you know, he must not be coming back for a while, and just kind of letting that change the attitude and the dedication. And it says here, when that servant, you know, kind of accepts his own understanding that the Lord is delaying his coming, he starts doing these other things like eating and drinking with the drunken and all that stuff. And that's when the Lord will come back, and he won't be aware of it. And when the Lord comes back, he's going to cut him asunder and appoint him his portion with the hypocrites. And there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. So you don't want to be in that position. And so this is just a really good chapter on kind of going over some of the signs of the end times, and what Jesus says that we should be doing all up until the end. So I hope you guys got some good information out of that, and I'll try to do some more of these soon.